everybody, and welcome in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. It is Monday, November 10th, 2025. I'm your host, George Kurth, joined by the man who has a horrible taste in teams, Cody Roadcap. How you doing, Cody?
I'm doing fantastic because the game hasn't started yet.
So it seems like you're very confident about tonight. I enjoy that.
I am very confident, but I'm also completely let's just put it this way. Every realm of possibility you could talk me into. Packers win by 20? Sure. Eagles win by 30? Sure. Game comes down to a missed kick by the Packers? Sure. Goes to overtime, ends in a tie? Sure. Anything is up for grabs.
I would like to think we're better than the Dallas Cowboys, and you tied them, so.
Yeah, but you'd also like to think that we're better than the Panthers, and they lost to the Saints.
And the Eagles lost to the Giants, so I'll give you that back, too. The NFL season's weird.
The Bills lost to the Dolphins. If people
Yes,
were still somehow in Survivor Leagues, I'm sure they're out now.
Yeah, I mean, our Survivor League's down to 3. And two of those 3 people almost lost with the Broncos on Thursday, too, which is even funnier.
Yeah, that 10-7 snooze fest.
Yeah, because Thursday Night Football needed a snooze fest again. But okay, you and I are probably getting off topic a lot today, but we're going to keep it moving. Make sure you follow us at the Couch GMs, Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok to get even more you do from the show. You can always drop your questions in our DMs, our questions on our posts, or you can talk to us live Mondays and Thursdays at 6:30 East and get your questions answered live on the air. Why don't we jump in and see what is happening? Giants fired head coach Brian Daboll after their Week 10 loss to the Bears in what was a pretty big collapse, honestly. They had the game in hand. Obviously, Jackson Dart went into concussion protocol. That didn't help the cause. But are you surprised that it was so early, or did you see it coming?
To be honest with you, I go back and forth with this one. I think it was. I mean, obviously they've lost double-digit leads 4 times now in the fourth quarter and have lost games. They're 2-8. I thought Jackson Dart might have shown enough that his growth with Daboll might have saved at least the season, seeing that play out. But the team has lost 4 in a row. I mean, even before this season, their interim coach, Mike Kafka, was getting head coaching opportunities. So it gives the Giants an opportunity to see, maybe we just keep something similar. So Jackson Dart has some sort of consistency, but transition into the new up-and-coming guy. Interesting enough, they're keeping the GM, and the GM's going to lead the new head coaching search. Excuse me. I mean, the guy that trades or doesn't re-sign Saquon Barkley. Watch him go to the divisional rival. Doesn't re-sign Daniel Jones.
At least Daniel Jones. He re-signed him.
All right. Release Daniel Jones, doesn't re-sign Xavier McKinney. All these guys that have become, good players in other places gets to outlive Brian Daboll. And I know the Sean McDermott said that is not something they're thinking about right now, but with the Bills struggles that we talked about at the top of the show, you'd have to think if he goes in for a senior offensive assistant or something just to, maybe he takes the rest of the year off because he can, but I think Buffalo might look for a reunion there.
Now, I was thinking about that. Is it there's no rules against somebody who was a head coach being able to take an assistant job somewhere else mid-season?
No, just for clarity, Robert Saleh got fired from the Jets last year. He was an assistant in Green Bay for the second half of the season.
Okay.
A lot of times they do it as senior assistants. Sometimes they're not even full-time staffs. They're just people that watch plays and give feedback and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes they even do it remotely. But I would expect Daboll to land somewhere in some sort of capacity and get back to calling plays, because I think he is still, a good offensive mind. The New York Giants have struggled for years, so I get the change. But again, I wasn't that surprised, but I was surprised at the same time. I know that's a terrible answer, but that's kind of how I feel.
I was surprised because I, like you, thought Jackson Dart did enough, showed enough progression. They had that little bit of fire when they had him and Cam Scatterboo in there together. I don't think the Scatterboo injury helped his cause at all.
Or the
Not
neighbors.
that was his fault, or the neighbor's injury. That's true too. Like, they are banged up, and I think we kind of forget it because we're like, oh, the Giants are not a good team. Like, this is just how it is. But no, honestly, if they still had neighbors in Scadaboo, and then Jackson Dart, doesn't leave that game and they win that game, and like they could actually still be a 5-6 win team potentially if all of them stayed healthy through the whole season and they kept on the run that they were for that short stretch. So I think that's why it is surprising to me. I thought he did enough to save his job at least through the end of the season. If he lost the locker room later in the season, then maybe they decide to cut ties with him, after the season's over. But I thought it was a little bit of a quick reaction to somebody who I'm actually still questioning if he's going to get a head coaching job next year. I think it's more likely he goes into an offensive coordinator role, at least for a year or two, and then might be back up in a coaching cycle in the future. But I don't think it's out of the question that he ends up being a head coach again.
Yeah, I think he has the potential to be a head coach again for sure. And I don't know if it'd be, I guess it depends on how many jobs we get. So now we already have two. We have the Titans, we have the Giants. Where else are we going to fall? Is Pete Carroll going to survive the season? Is Kellen Moore going to be a one and done? How about Aaron Glenn? Does Kevin Stefanski finally get the nail in the coffin in Cleveland? Those are some of the other names that you're thinking at the top of mind. Yeah, because there doesn't feel like a lot of other openings because everyone has
Did
been.
you say Mike McDaniel?
But they seem to love him. But to the point, 3 weeks ago, everyone was talking about the Eagles and the Giants game. The Giants are winning. They have Jackson Dart. If you would have said 3 weeks ago they're going to fire Brian Daboll in 3 weeks, it's hard to believe. Feel the same way coming off a win from Miami and Mike McDaniel. But 3 weeks from now, we could be in a different boat. But that's probably one of the other names there as well.
And I actually have something more on him later, so I'm going to cut the conversation there. We're going to move on to Daron Payne receiving a 1-game suspension for throwing a punch at Amon-Ra St. Brown just in the middle of the game. That was a little bit of a surprise to me.
Yeah, that was kind of weird. I mean, I'll be honest, transparent for the listeners. That Sunday slate, the 4:00 window, 3 games, all were blowouts by halftime. It was hard to pay attention to. But still seeing the replays back there had to be something said. We'll never know what was actually said, but just to like kind of stand up and take a swing it just felt odd.
Yeah, it did. And I mean, there's a lot of frustration in Washington right now too. I mean, Jaden Daniels, who I can move us in injuries, was not placed on injured reserve because there's still a chance he's coming back soon. They're in a bye week this week, but they have not had close to the season that they were expecting to have. They've been very banged up. They have not gotten it going. And they're even questioning now they're probably not making the playoffs after coming off of an NFC Championship game appearance. So that doesn't help the cause of them trying to keep the emotions down.
No, for sure. And then their defensive coordinator, Joe Witt Jr., had his play calling duties taken away for Dan Quinn. So there's definitely some disconnect. Now, sometimes that works out. Just look what the Lions did this past week. Dan Campbell took over as the play caller, and they had a really good game against Washington. But like you mentioned, they're really banged up. They're not the team that a lot of people, including I believe both of us, had them in the playoffs in our preseason predictions. They definitely have struggled, and that just goes to show how much up and down the league can be and how injuries can play such a big factor.
Exactly. And we'll see if they can put together a second half run. Them trying to do it with Marcus Mariota is obviously going to be a much harder ask than if it was with Jaden Daniels, but we'll see what happens there. The quarterback surprise is we got a random Monday morning tweet this morning that says Joe Burrow's practice window is open. He's going to be practicing limited today. 21-day window opened. That means that he must be activated by December 1st. That is the Monday of week 14. And that would mean he would be playing on December 7th.
Yeah, but it sounds like the game that they're trying to get him back for is that Thursday night, Sunday night showdown for the Baltimore Ravens in a must-win situation.
Which would be the following week, week 15, I believe.
No, Thanksgiving. It'd be in 2 weeks. He wouldn't do the full window.
My bad. I'm mixing up So that's way ahead of schedule from where we're expecting. You and I were both expecting week 15.
Yeah.
And they're talking week 13, I believe, is what we're saying.
Yeah. I mean, it would be impressive, but I wasn't expecting him to practice. And I think it'll be tough to put him back there with the way the Bengals offensive line is. And Joe Flacco has been decent for them. Now they haven't, he's putting up a lot of yards. It's great for fantasy. It hasn't always turned into wins. But Joe Burrow is going to try to save the season. And if he could come back, honestly, if he could come back for that Thanksgiving game, that would be great. Although Joe Flacco there returned to Baltimore Thursday Night Football, be a lot of fun too.
I mean, let's be honest. His first return to Baltimore didn't go well this season because he got destroyed by the Ravens in their one loss early in the season. But he does have a better pause. He does have a better offense around him. He does not have a better defense around him, but he has a better offense around him in Cincinnati.
Not even a little bit. Like, let's talk about, I mean, we don't have to relive the Colston Loveland game that they should have won. Like, Joe Burrow's not saving that either. No. That's just the unfortunateness. And then, speaking of Joe Burrow, we should really start doing like a segment like what's random things you hear on the internet, rumors or something that you might think. But one thing that caught my eye, I believe it was actually on TikTok, somebody referenced some Schefter on somewhere kind of talking. And, we talked about the trade deadline last week and the Jets getting all these picks. And there's a lot of talk that they want a quarterback, but they want to go the veteran route. And then there was some buzz on the internet saying the Bengals would move on from Joe Burrow. They're kind of getting a little bit tired of the injury stuff like that. The Bengals are the Bengals anyway, so wouldn't be surprised. Maybe a little new Broadway Joe coming to New York this offseason. Just a little rumor buzz out there. Let's get through this season first, but that was something that just caught my eye. And then, like, if you think about it, because they are the Bengals, is like, it wouldn't be the most surprising thing they've ever done.
The closest thing in my head I can come up with to compare to what you just said, no matter how true or false it is how the Browns moved on from Baker Mayfield. But Baker Mayfield won a singular playoff game. Joe Burrow was in a Super Bowl and completely turned around a franchise. So it seems absolutely ridiculous. But at the same time, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah. And like I said, that was some internet buzz. I'm not reporting, pretending to think I have inside source or anything like that. Just something I saw. It was a fascinating discussion and gets all Couch GMs minds going. So I had to throw it out there.
That's what Couch GMs do on the internet. We put out this ridiculous scenario and say, is it possible this would ever happen? And it's sad, but I feel like there's some random world where this could happen. It's very unlikely.
If the Jets said, here's 3 first-round picks for Joe Burrow,
and they like somebody in the draft, a quarterback,
or they're just tired of unable to stay healthy during the season. Yeah. Like, have they been enough of that? Knowing they have so much work on that defense, knowing they're probably going to have to renegotiate or trade or cut T. Higgins this offseason because of the contract they gave him. They already gave Jamar Chase a boatload of money. But trading Joe Burrow, you'd have to think that would upset Jamar Chase for sure. So a lot of fascinating things, but that's offseason talk. We're only halfway through the season. We are in week 9.
We are in week 9. We're in week 10.
You're right. We are in week 10.
Double digits. And in week 10, Davante Adams left the Rams game with an oblique injury, but it is reported he could have come back if the game was closer, but they had the game in hand against San Francisco. So another injury scare for a Rams wide receiver that ends up looking like it's going to be okay. Puka obviously came back from that situation last week and had a good game, so it seems like we're all good here.
Yeah, Rams are looking real good. Rams, Seahawks looking real good. That's going to be a fun battle to watch to see who comes out on top of the NFC West. No disrespect to the 49ers, but I think they're a tier below with all their injuries.
Agreed. Maybe if they get healthy at the end of the year and sneak in, it might be a fun playoff matchup, but I don't think it's going to be that until there. And they're going to have a hard time beating the Seahawks when they play them again this season. And I think the Rams and Seahawks play each other twice still. So that's going to be fun down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some games of the week we're going to be talking about later, I am sure. J.K. Dobbins in the Thursday night game suffered a foot injury. I'm thinking we might start seeing a little more R.J. Harvey here. Unsure if Dobbins is going to miss any time, but something that you should be looking at for fantasy at least.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, being that was Thursday, and he was still in there most of the game too. So, like, it was a little bit later, but they had the extra day's rest. We'll have to see what the injury report is and check back in on this one on Thursday's show for sure.
Garrett Wilson did come back for the Jets this week. He then almost immediately left with a re-injury of his knee. Is now expected to miss 3 to 4 weeks. I have not heard any confirmation for or against the injured reserve list, but if we hear anything about that before Thursday, we'll let you know.
Yeah, because it's 3 weeks, I wonder if they'll just keep him on the active roster. But maybe because it's a re-injury, they're also like, hey, look, we're not going anywhere. You're part, despite them getting a win this past week, you're part of our long-term future. We're going to just shut you down.
And I don't know if they'll shut him down for the rest of the season, but shut him down for the 4 weeks at least, I could see being a possibility, making sure that it doesn't compound into a worse knee injury that could actually linger into next season.
Yeah, I think he'll be fine for next year.
Yeah. And then Dalton Kincaid injured his hamstring and left the game. That Bills were getting throttled by the Miami Dolphins. So unsure. Hamstring injuries usually mean missed time. We'll keep you updated with that one. He's kind of been one of the tight ends you've been able to put in your lineup every week, despite the tight end position being pretty weak.
Yeah, and the Bills, for what it's worth, not that the injury is directly related, they did sign Mecole Hardman, I believe, to the practice squad. So they're still looking for answers in that passing game.
Yeah, it's very inconsistent there in Buffalo, to put it bluntly. But maybe we'll see enough Josh Allen hero ball to see how far they can go this year. Do you want to get into a reality check?
Sure.
Week 10 was filled with epic running back performances. Me and the Couch GMs World Cup really enjoyed it, being somebody who has Jahmyr Gibbs and Jonathan Taylor. And Jonathan Taylor kind of has been the centerpiece of the season at this point. But when you look at the top list of fantasy point scorers, take out quarterbacks, there's a lot of running backs at the top of the list this year. We've seen the resurgence of Christian McCaffrey. Devon Achane doesn't get a lot of credit. Bijan, as much as he's been a little inconsistent, he's up there. There's, I think, only four running backs in the top 15 right now. Wide receiver 4 right now is George Pickens, and he's technically a wide receiver too. With that being said, we've had a lot more focus on the wide receiver position when it comes to fantasy drafts and how to build your team. Are we moving back into the age of the fantasy running back?
Yes, but no. So let me clarify that for you a little bit. I think we are seeing a resurgence of the run game because we are still living in the era of we want teams to go 15 plays. We don't want to give up big plays, too high safety, limited the explosives. Unless you're the Seattle Seahawks throwing to Jackson Smith and Jigba right now, you're not making that many big plays. With that said, I don't know if we're fully returning to the era of fantasy running backs only because you have your Jonathan Taylor, who is having an elite season right now. But even Jahmyr Gibbs, he has some really good games, and he had a great one last. But there's still David Montgomery there. You mentioned Bijan Robinson. Yeah, but there's still Tyler Algier, who has more touchdowns on the season than him. So it's like running backs are back, and we're getting more consistency out of them. But because it's also the era of, it's better when you have 2 good running backs and they rotate, and it's hard to say that era of fantasy football is back because the up and down waves, and there's the top guys, but there's the top guys at receiver too. And I guess the other point to that would be once you get past those top guys, then you're just in like a wasteland of mid.
So you're just saying it's top heavy, but it's not necessarily as deep as it used to be back in the day, I guess, is how we could say it. I sound old when I say it that way. But I guess the argument for it being still favoring the wide receiver is that the split running backs. The argument against it is we're not in an era where we're seeing 4,000 or 5,000 yard passers anymore. So you're going to get more consistent play out of running backs. You're going to get more, like, you're in a situation now where you're looking for touches because teams are throwing the ball less. So even if you're in a split backfield, maybe we're looking at the same amount of touches for the back that's in a 70-30 split as we were in the past for the back that was the primary running back, but teams were throwing the ball more.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the way defense is being played right now, where they'll let you run the ball because they expect you'll eventually get a holding, you'll eventually get a false start, and we just don't want to give up those explosives. Why we're not seeing the dominant passing performances is what leads it to feeling like the running back point. To your point, if you look at just point scoring, the top 4 non-quarterbacks are running backs this year. If you look at points per game, like I think like 6 of those guys, and using points per game because that eliminates the bye, discrepancy in some of these points. A lot of them are running backs. Over 50% of them are running backs in the top 10. So it is an interesting dilemma. It just feels like, and I guess you could say that about the wide receiver position too. Like it is top heavy. Like I feel like fantasy in general this year has been like pretty top heavy, and then like it's just a bunch of guys that you're taking shots at.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe that is what it is like, and we've seen more of the boom plays out of the running backs than we have the wide receivers. If you're excluding Jackson Smith and Jigba, I guess at this point you can say Amon-Ra St. Brown because he's wide receiver too. And then Puka, who has been fantastic and missed a couple of weeks, and he's still wide receiver 5 or whatever it is. So maybe it's just the top heavy guys being the guys that are booming are what making it feel that way. But it makes you think when you go into next season, if we're still going to be playing the game similarly, are you still then more willing to take more shots at running backs in the first 3 rounds than you are, trying to get those top end wide receivers because you're trying to end up finding that Jonathan Taylor who was taken in round 2/3 and then ends up being running back 1?
I think that's also where you have to like look at it though. Like let's go back to this year, looking at the running back position. Who are the guys that we took at the top of the draft? We took Saquon Barkley. We took Bijan Robinson. We took Jahmyr
Gibbs. Yep.
Those are kind of the 3 big names. Christian McCaffrey is going in the 2nd round. That was some injury concerns. He's having a great year. Those injury concerns are still going to be there next year. Jonathan Taylor was going to the end of the 2nd round, beginning of the 3rd round. He's the top guy this year. But you also have like the same thing with Devon Achane. The questions in Miami, and then your James Cook, Bijan Robinson's down at 6 in terms of fantasy points per game. Like Cam Scatterbu was really late and he came on really strong. Saquon Barkley is the top 2 pick, only having. So it's just going to be like, where are these guys at? Bucky Irving, when he gets back, where does he fall into this? Because he's still averaging 15.6 per game. He just hasn't played, so that also plays a factor into that. So I think it's going to be a lot of those guys. I think the sweet spot still might be the 2nd or 3rd round because the running back position has so much turnover from year to year, injury related. So like, let me get my top pass catcher, whether that is a Jamar Chase, a Justin Jefferson, even though he is having a little bit down, Amon-Ra St. Brown, those kind of guys. And then let me pepper those 2 through 5 rounds with running backs, almost going like hero wide receiver strategy going into next year feels like the best route to take sitting here on November 10th.
I like it. That is, I think, a good outlook on how the league has been so far. And I know we'll have plenty more talk about this when we get to the offseason, but I'm going to move us back to this season and to the Patriots, who TreVeyon Henderson had the breakout game we've all been waiting for. But again, Ramondre Stevenson was not playing. Will TreVeyon Henderson have the starting job when Stevenson is back?
Yeah, but they'll still be, to my last point, they'll still rotate him.
But like how much? I think the question is like, we don't care if there's a split. There's splits on almost every backfield this year. Is there enough carries for Henderson on a week-to-week basis to make him relevant?
Yeah, there's enough carries. I think there'll be enough. But to my point was, even if it's 70-30, right? Henderson gets 70, Stevenson gets 30. If this game on this random Sunday, that 30% is all red zone carries and he gets 3 rushing touchdowns and Henderson gets 100 yards, Stevenson still had a better day in terms of fantasy. That's where the frustration comes at the running back position. God, I hope so, but I hope Henderson showed what he is capable of and that he can be, a potential league winner as we go down the stretch, or a guy that you make a trade for. It's going to be hard now after the breakout, but it's a guy we talked about last week is trying to go in because they have a really nice schedule to round out the season. So hopefully Henderson has shown enough. and he can keep that job. And maybe we've made this reference to with Mike Vrabel at the Titans, Dion Lewis, Derrick Henry. It took like half a season of them going back and forth, and then he finally just was like, all right, Derrick's the best guy, the younger guy. Let's roll with him. Maybe that's what they're going to do now in New England. But outside of Travion Henderson, what a job, Mike Vrabel, Drake May's second year, this whole team, 8-2, sitting atop of the AFC. I mean, I don't want to see another Patriots Super Bowl for a long time, but they're playing really good football right now.
They really are. It's impressive. Sorry, I'm coming in the chat here. It's impressive how the turnaround happened so quick. Like, we know that Drake May was, one of the better promising young quarterbacks last year, but we were kind of down on the Patriots because since Brady left, they've been this middling team or this team that just had nothing to them. So you don't think they change a whole lot, but they changed the head coach. And this shows again why Vrabel shouldn't have gotten fired in Tennessee. Like, it seems like he has something that really does put a team together. And I question his usage of running backs, but there's not a whole lot more you can question about the way he coaches a team. He does well, and they have the pieces there, and they're overperforming for their age and for where they're at in their build. But that shows you it could be a very dangerous team in, say, a year or two even.
No, for sure.
So you and I'm sure we're going to have plenty of bickering later in the show, but I think there's one team that we can both agree on being someone we don't really like. How good are the Chicago Bears?
This is a great question, and I know some people are going to call it bias. The lights are a little bit dark, but there's obviously Packers memorabilia behind me and whatnot. So let's talk about these 6-3 Chicago Bears. Why don't we? And why I can't get on board that they are a, top tier team. They lost to Minnesota week 1 when JJ McCarthy couldn't do anything and they blew a fourth quarter lead. Okay. Fourth quarter, first game, week 1, it's weird. They got boat raced week 2 versus the Detroit Lions. They beat Dallas at home. Dallas's defense isn't very good. They have to block a field goal to beat the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yep.
They beat the Washington Commanders by a point. They beat the New Orleans Saints. When they play another good team, they, with no Lamar Jackson, lose by 2 scores to the Baltimore Ravens. It took an epic collapse by the Cincinnati Bengals defense to have them win on the last minute of the game on a 53-yard touchdown because no one could tackle the tight end. And then it took another epic collapse by the New York Giants, both teams that we don't think are very good.
Yep.
That ended up getting their coach fired. But here they are, 6-3, and you can't apologize for winning. So they have a tough, their next 4 games, Minnesota, they're going to get that rematch, but this time it's in Minnesota. It's in Minnesota. Pittsburgh, Aaron Rodgers owns them. Can they get over that hump? Philadelphia, in Philly, then at Green Bay for their first matchup with the Packers. Next 4 games are going to be very telling for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, I was kind of reflecting back after watching them come back on the Giants and was like, where was their signature win? And like, is it the Bengals? Maybe. Like, that was probably their best win. But the Bengals not being able to tackle a tight end and the Bears coming back the way they like, that's not a win you really want to flaunt as your best win of the season. Like, it was a chaos game and against a team that has 3 wins right now.
And just
the Giants game the same way against a team that has 2 wins right now. Like, It's impressive how they've built up this clout and they have not had a win that impresses me besides the fact that it was like exciting in a comeback fashion. Like, it hasn't been a quality win against a quality team.
Yeah, and I would say probably their best win is against Dallas. We know what Dallas is. They beat them handily at home. All the props to them. Some people might have said it was a trap game with the Micah Parsons game coming back the week after. So be it. But when I see barely beating the Commanders, barely beating the Raiders on a block kick, the epic collapses from Cincinnati and New York, but then losing to JJ McCarthy in his first start when he played like, I can't even say those words on this podcast, for 3/4 of the game, losing to the Baltimore Ravens without Lamar Jackson. Maybe I'm wrong, and I'll take it if I am. The next 4 weeks are going to be telling for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, you and I are on the same page. So I think we can move off of that for now and move to a fan question, if you're good with that.
Of course.
Nico on Twitch. Opponent I beat this week has Gadsden, and he is injured now. He has Ferguson and McBride. Suggested to trade Ferguson and Woody Marks for Rico Dowdle. What do you think? Is it too much value? Should I ask for more? And I think I actually do have his roster here. 8-man PPR and Superflex. He is 7-3 with Hurts, Baker, Flacco. Receivers, Rashee Rice, St. Brown, Zay, and Sutton. Running back, CMC, Achane, Kyron, Derrick Henry, Woody Marks, Monangai, and tight ends, McBride and Ferguson.
Yeah, I mean, back to your original question, if Ferguson and Woody Marks get you Rico Dowdle at this point in the season, I think you win that trade. Like, I think it's going to take more to get Rico Dowdle after they've said that he is going to be the running back moving forward. So I think that's a good place to start. I think you might have to up it a little bit, looking back at your team. Whether that is, the problem is like, if you're looking at the running backs, I mean, I don't know if Woody Marks and Monangai makes sense in that sense, but I wouldn't be trading Derrick Henry and Ferguson for Rico Dowdle. So I think it's a good place to start. I don't know if it's going to pull the trigger. I'm thinking from personal experience, if I was in a situation where I had Gatson go down and someone offered me Ferguson and Woody Marks for Rico Dowdle, unless I felt pretty good about the rest of my running backs, that's where it is. Without knowing his team, that's kind of where I'm at. I don't think it's going to get the deal done, but that'd be my first trade order.
Oh, he confirmed he'll do it. So because he's that desperate for the tight end.
Yeah, do it.
So I think you should do it. We actually have a question coming up in a few questions that's going to be some buy lows and sell highs, and I put a couple guys together because I was going to throw at Cody on the fly and he wasn't prepared. But one of the people I had as a sell is Jake Ferguson, because he is the ultimate touchdown dependent player in all of fantasy football. He's probably going to keep scoring them. Like, I'm not saying he's going to completely disappear, but if you can get value for him, I'm doing it. And Rico Dowdle is a clear step up from Woody Marks. So I think you're good having McBride making the trade of Ferg and Woody Marks for Rico Dowdle.
Yeah, and I mean, the nice thing about this one is you're also trading two players that you're not starting for a player that you might not even be starting.
Yeah, it's a low risk trade.
But yeah, if he's going to do it, I would do that for sure.
Yeah, and I think there's a chance that Rico Dowdle ends up being able to help you down the stretch with some buys. So
his team is Lamar. Thank you for the there. Yep. Lamar, Gibbs, Dowdle, JSN, Puka, Gatson, Kamara, Travion Henderson, and Ladd. Yeah, I mean, I don't know why he would give up Dowdle in that case, and leave him with, obviously Gibbs is top tier, but then leaving him with, I guess you're also getting a lot of the benefit of the Travion Henderson breakout game. So
yeah, he's probably confident in it because of the Travion Henderson breakout game, but like Kamara and Henderson, we don't know what they're going to be like coming up here.
Yeah.
So don't tell them about us until after you make the trade, and then make sure you share with your friends and subscribe. We appreciate you.
But alrighty.
All right. We talked about it slightly earlier, but they did mention in Miami that Mike McDaniel has a chance to save his job if the team keeps playing for him and they doesn't lose the locker room by the end of the season. So they're giving him the rest of the year. Then they come out and they, beat the Bills in convincing fashion. Do you think Mike McDaniel has saved his job?
I'll say yes, but like I mentioned, I would have thought the same thing when Brian Daboll beat the Giants. Or beat the Eagles, excuse me.
Yeah.
And there's still 8 more weeks left of the season, so a lot can change.
Yes, I think that was a really good start, and I think it shows that he still has control of the locker room, which is a good sign. And they have already been through the blender to the point where I don't know if it can get worse enough till the end of the season that he could lose it. So I'm saying for now he saved it, but like you said, we thought Brian Daboll saved his job, so anything can happen. I'm leaning towards that he did save his job. So, sorry, one more question here. Is the Miami defense a thing now after beating Atlanta and Buffalo back to home?
I think they had a really good game the last 2 weeks. It's still hard for me to believe that they are a top, they fixed all their problems. I don't think they got better trading Jalen Phillips this past week. It was a divisional game. It took them 6 years to beat the Bills, but divisional games can always, throw some loops into it. If they have some, matchups down the line, like I'm trying to look at their schedule real quick.
Commanders and in an international game, and then bye week Saints and Jets.
So yeah, I mean,
that's a favorable stretch.
It's a favorable stretch, and at least they've played better the last couple of weeks. So I'm not like ready to like pound the table for them, but I think it's a good observation. Hey, they beat Atlanta. They have a decent offense. They beat Buffalo. They've been, they have a decent offense. They've struggled a little bit, but they just put up a bunch of points on the Chiefs. So, yeah.
I worry about upside because, the Bills game's easy for them to get up for because it's divisional, and also divisional games are weird, and they traded pieces. But in favorable matchups like that, yeah, I think that they have potential to have some boom games coming down the stretch, and we're going to prove that Miami's defense is better than Green Bay's tonight. That's even better.
Just trying to see. I mean, a part of that is turnovers, though, because turnovers are where you make all your money in fantasy football, and that's where Green Bay has struggled this season for sure.
Yeah. So with the Steelers collapsing lately, the Ravens on their come up with a 3-game win streak, and we talked about Joe Burrow opening the practice window. They want to get him back by Thanksgiving. Who do you think wins the AFC North, as it appears that the door has slammed wide open again?
Also, just for fun facts, in terms of points per game, Green Bay and Miami are tied, which still feels crazy.
I love how this guy still had to make a point just to ruin the TikTok I was going to cut of this later. So I have to now go in and cut this out.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you.
All right. You want to re-ask the question? So
yeah. Okay. Should I go back to the whole spiel? Cool. So the Steelers have been on a collapse lately. The Ravens on a 3-game win streak. And we talked about earlier how Joe Burrow had his practice window open. They're trying to get him back by Thanksgiving. So who do you think wins the AFC North with the door seemingly slammed wide back open?
I still think as long as Lamar stay healthy, the Ravens will pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bengals might be in too much of a hole at this point, losing to the Jets, losing to the Bears. Like, those are 2 games they had to win. I think it'll be the Ravens, then the Steelers, then the Bengals, then the Browns. That's how I would put it.
That's exactly how I'm feeling now. It feels like the Ravens playing as bad as they did at the beginning of the season was kind of out of nowhere until you realized how injured they were. And now that they're mostly back healthy, they look like the Ravens again. Maybe not 100%, but they're at least a team that's going to take some noise. The Steelers looked super hot off the blocks, but now it looks exactly like it has for them the last 5, 6, 7 years, where I would not be shocked. They're going to finish 9-8 again. They do it every year. They're going to do it again. And if you would have told me that 9 wins the division, I would have said you're crazy until maybe 4 weeks ago. But now it looks like there's a good chance the Ravens get to 10 or 11, just with the schedule they have down the stretch and the fact that they got Lamar back and they're on a run. So I think it's the Ravens as well. I'm going to go Ravens Steelers. Bengals make a push near the end and are in that fight in the last 2 weeks for the wild card. And then the Browns, who knows?
Yeah, so let me let's just play this out. Now I'm kind of curious.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at these schedules now, let's talk about the Ravens. So next week they get to play. They play Cleveland. Okay.
I'll give them a win. Yep.
They play the Jets.
That's a win.
Bengals Thanksgiving.
I'll give them a split with the Bengals. Just thinking if Burrow's back.
All right. So let's give this one to the Ravens. It's in Baltimore. We're not sure if Burrow's going to be back.
Cool. So that's 7-5 at this point.
Pittsburgh.
I have to think they split with Pittsburgh too.
All right. So we'll give this one to the Ravens. We'll just say in Baltimore then.
That's an 8-5 record so far.
Then the Bengals were giving them the loss.
Yep. 8-6.
8-6. New England.
That's a game. I'll give you the call on this one because that's tough.
All right. Their next matchup is Green Bay. Let's say they go 1-1 in those two.
Okay, cool. So that'll make it a 9-7.
And then they lost to Pittsburgh the last week. So they're 9-8.
9-8.
So now we have to do this with the Steelers quick. Kind of see where they're at because they're one game ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Steelers have Cincinnati this week.
Give them the win because there's no Burrow.
Okay.
6-4.
Chicago.
I can't say Chicago wins that game. So 7-4.
Buffalo.
That's a loss.
Baltimore, that one's we're giving a loss. So now we're at 7-7.
7-6.
7-6. Thank you. Miami.
Who knows where Miami's going to be at that point, man? I have to give the Steelers a win, I guess.
All right. I was going to say, if it's close, let's just give them the win just to see how this plays out. So Detroit.
8-6. That's a loss, 8-7.
Cleveland.
Probably a win.
All right. Yeah, give them a win.
Yeah.
So they're
9 wins, 9-7 going to the final week
against Baltimore, which I think we just gave the Steelers the win in that one. So
it's actually going to come down to that game. So
Steelers, Baltimore, Sunday Night Football, winner gets the division. You've heard it here first.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. Okay.
It's
going to be a 9-10 win team in our guess, and it's coming out of that game.
And then if we look at the Bengals schedule real quick, I don't know because I still think they're kind of like out of it at this point. But they have the Steelers and then a bye. Our Steelers, Jets. Why am I reading the schedule? They have a bye this week. Then it's the Steelers. My page moved on me. Patriots, Ravens, Bills, Ravens, Dolphins, Cardinals, Browns. They're not catching enough wins in that schedule.
They have a harder schedule than the other two, it sounds like. The Ravens, I think, have the easiest because they have 2 or 3 cakewalk games, including the Jets and the Browns, and there was someone else in there. I think that was easy. So,
all right.
Okay, cool.
One other fan question.
Yeah.
Is Sutton wide receiver 2 at the Broncos now with the big performance of Troy Franklin and his target volume? I really want to, and this is Nico over on Twitch again. He really wants to get rid of him.
Let's get rid of Sutton. I was really on the Sutton bandwagon for a while. And I don't think it's going to be a clear 1-2 between Sutton and Franklin, but I do actually have Franklin, on the rise, and he should be off the waiver wire at this point, but I've seen he's still fairly widely available. I think it's a good time to sell on Sutton. And I mean, honestly, the next question we have on here is buy low, sell high. So I'm good with trying to sell on Sutton. You're just not really selling high because he's been kind of inconsistent. I'm not expecting a big breakout from him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think still think Sutton will be the top guy. I think Franklin, he's seen the uptarks. He's still a big play threat. I just the consistency worries me with him. I think Sutton has the safer floor on a week-to-week basis.
Safer floor, I could see that. I think Franklin has the ceiling, and I think that offense in general just is going to be a roller coaster because we've seen 1 quarter amazing Bo Nix, and then next 5 quarters are horrible Bo Nix. So I don't really know what to say.
Yeah. All right. Do you want to hit me with some of those buy low, sell high candidates? See where we're at.
And feel free to add guys in as we go. So do you want me to just throw 3 buys at you and then we'll just talk as you want to?
Sure.
Okay, so I've got Jaylen Warren as a buy candidate. I know I had to talk myself into this one, but if you're somebody who is kind of fighting to get into the playoffs and needs a running back, you can probably buy him pretty cheap right now. He's still getting the workload. His job's not in risk, and he has a really good running back schedule from weeks 11 to 14. Sketching the playoffs, so maybe you're setting yourself up for failure long term, but if your goal is to get in, somebody you could look at. Quinshot Judkins is almost the opposite. You can still buy him low because he's just coming back from the injury. He's got a kind of mediocre schedule of coming up to the playoffs, but his fantasy playoff schedule is fantastic. So maybe somebody who, if you're in a better spot and you can get him cheap, that's a good guy. And then you're still gonna have to pay some for this one, but you're never gonna get Justin Jefferson cheaper than now. He just only had 4 catches this week, but still had 12 targets. Go talk to somebody, talk down JJ McCarthy, say that his ceiling's dropped, and I think you're gonna have a chance to get him for cheaper than you usually would.
Yeah, the thing with Justin Jefferson is that guy is probably, depending on what his other pieces are, right? It's always hard to single out one player.
Mm-hmm.
They might not be doing so well because of his, lack of performance. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they were like a Justin Jefferson, Chase Brown top 2 picks, right? Like they could be having a tough season. So I like that one as like the big name. The Jaylen Warren one I think is fascinating because I'm in a dynasty league that is, my team is just so bad. Long story short, I took over for a team that basically colluded with someone else and gave away all his good players. So now I'm trying to rebuild this team back from nothing. And Jaylen Warren is like my second best running back, and I'm a terrible team. And I'm like, I just started thinking I should try to trade him for a draft pick coming forward. So I like the buy low on him, or just moving him, trying to get something out of him. He had an okay night last night, but he is like a guy on that offense. The offense has been struggling. And then I like the Quinshon Judkins one. I just don't know if people really let you buy low on him because they've seen what he has done, and now that he's back, they'll also notice the play. Like, if that one is going to have to be a situation where the team needs to win now, and you're, like you mentioned, in that safer spot of, I feel pretty
If
good
you're
about my
the
playoff chance.
currently 7, 8, 9 win team.
Yeah, or even if you're like a 6-win team, but the rest, like, you can tell by your standings, like you feel pretty confident in making the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And then for sells, I've got DeAndre Swift. Maybe this is just me not believing in the Bears. Maybe this is me believing in Kyle Monangai taking more and more of the workload. He still had a 10, I think 11 point game in half PPR this week because he got a touchdown, but you definitely saw the split a lot more than you did previous to his injury. So he's somebody I'm trying to sell quickly. I mentioned Jake Ferguson. We had the question before, most touchdown dependent player in all of fantasy. So Jake Ferguson's a sell for me. Breece Hall and his inconsistency. He's had 2 solid weeks in a row. He scored 3 touchdowns, which is all of his touchdowns all season. I think you're better off believing he's going to go back to what he was at the beginning of the year with the inconsistency rather than going with the recent just because the Jets are not good. And then the last one, how I'm on the fence with and don't know what to do with, is Travion Henderson. Do you sell him because you're going to have insane value and he has the hype? Or do you hold thinking that you are going to have it back to put in your lineup the rest of the year? Or are you buying thinking that it could only even get better?
I'm not selling unless somebody is buying, like, the housing market $50,000 over asking cash, right? Like,
I feel that so hard.
We've talked about Henderson's playoff schedule. It's really good. You've held on to him at this point. Like, unless someone is like throwing you a Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously that's not straight up. There's some other pieces that are wrong, but like, you're getting a player like that, or you're getting a Bijan Robinson, and you're, Travion Henderson plus a players, then for sure. Like, I'm not saying he's untradeable, but you saw the breakout game. The playoff schedule is good. You've held on to this point. You're just going to ride with him. The other guys that you mentioned, I think they're all sell candidates. I just think you're going to have a hard time finding a buyer.
I disagree with that for Ferguson because I've now heard multiple times, not only in the comments today, but even with people I've talked to, that Ferguson still carries a lot of clout, which I don't understand. I know you don't understand, but people just look at numbers and they're like, Ferguson's top 3 tight end, but he's definitely not.
What's clout? Like, that's what I'm saying. When you're all right, sell Ferguson.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know my homie just got Rico Dowdle for him, so this kind of hurts
Yeah.
but like, you're not getting, like, are you getting Cortland Sutton for Jake Ferguson? No. Maybe a Troy Franklin. Like, if you believe in that, you can get like a
No.
Troy. So like the tier, like the sell, but like the tier of player that you're going to get back, that's just the tight end position, unless you're getting a Brock Bowers, a Trey McBride, Tucker Kraft before his injury, maybe.
Mhm.
Like, that's what makes so hard, trading tight ends. They're like pieces you add in to put the deal over the top. They're not normally the pieces that start the trade conversation.
I understand that. The other one I heard was Jake Ferguson for Omarion Hampton, but that's obviously somebody who's locked into a playoff spot trying to get a running back for the fantasy playoffs. That's not a move that everyone could do or would do.
Why would I don't, yeah.
I don't know why the Hampton owner did it, but he did it.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense to me.
I think it was somebody who's desperate for wins, didn't have a tight end.
Go pick up Jawan Johnson. Some random dude scored 17 points last week. Theo Johnson did it the week before. We told you about Colston Loveland. Like, the tight end position is so high variance. I don't understand the point of trading for elite tight end players.
But that just shows you that there's some people who still value that position or the studs at that position more than they should. And I'm not even saying Ferguson's a stud. If you ask me, there's 3 guys right now who are above the rest, and even they have inconsistencies. One of them is Brock Bowers. He scored 4 points this week. But Brock Bowers is obviously one of those guys. Trey McBride and Jalen Warren or Tyler Warren. Those are the 3 right now that I would put at the top.
Yeah. It's just very interesting to me. I mean, we're talking about a guy that goose egged 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly.
He had, yeah. Okay.
Why don't we save my next question for later because we're not at the trade deadline yet.
Okay.
You and I can talk about it either Thursday or next Monday. But anyway, why don't we jump into the waiver wire?
I'm gonna throw this question up here while I pull this up here. I like Nico chiming in saying that the Patriots don't have any running backs left, so keep Travion Henderson for sure. So I think that definitely plays into that as well. But let's jump in to the waiver.
All right. Not the best waiver wire week in my opinion, but we can find some guys. I think especially at wide receiver, there's still some value out there. But I'll start with running backs. I've got on here Sean Tucker because it finally looks like the Bucs are moving away from Rachaad White, realizing that he doesn't get yards. All he does is score touchdowns. So I mean, maybe the ceiling on Tucker is low because he's not gonna get the red zone work, but we'll see. And that's also assuming that Bucky Irving still isn't back because I feel like he should have been back 4 weeks ago and he still isn't. So this could be a completely null if we see Bucky Irving back. Tyler Algier, I think even more just as a handcuff. People are going to overreact and overbuy on him with Fab though because he scored 2 touchdowns. But especially if you're the Bijan owner or somebody that's out there with an extra bench spot, now that we're most of the way through buys, could be someone you have on there as your speculative guy. And then Amari DeMarcado is back on here because we had an injury to Bam Knight during that game. The ceiling's very low. I'm hoping we get Trey Benson back soon, but somebody who could be a starting running back.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. This waiver wire is not great.
No, I think most of your value on this wire comes in the wide receiver position. We got Alec Pierce, who has scored more than 10 half PPR points 3 last 4 weeks. So potential flex option. You can still get off the wire. We got Tez Johnson, who same exact situation as Alec Pierce, scored 10 plus half PPR points through the last 4 weeks. He's got value until we get either Godwin or Evans back. Evans longer term, Godwin, who knows when he's going to be back at this point. He's just frustrating like Bucky. And then Parker Washington was still under 20% owned in NFL.com leagues. I think he struggled slightly more being the number 1 option than he did having the pressure off of him when either Brian Thomas or I don't know why I struggle on that name, or Travis were there. But when he is still the top option, at least for now, I think he's somebody who needs to at least be owned and you have a chance to flex.
Yeah, the Alex Pierce one is fascinating. Again, I don't love any of these options, but Pierce has started to show consistency for sure. I would say though, with the just not talking wide receiver, we talked about Joe Burrow potentially coming back. If you're not in an IR league, you might be able to wait one more week to get him, but I would try to jump in on that early if you have this space available and not ravaged with buys. So it's not a move for everybody. He's sitting at 61% owned because of those non-IR leagues. So when to throw that name in there as well.
I was curious. I was about to check how far. So he actually doesn't meet our criteria, but somebody that I want to throw out there. It's a good call. If he's going to come back as soon as he is, he's somebody you're going to play down the stretch. But like, if we were expecting him to come back in week 15 for the fantasy playoffs, it's hard to be like, put a, off the IR Joe Burrow in your lineup. We'll have a few weeks to actually see if he's up to speed, and I have no doubts he will be, but at least it gives you more peace of mind.
Also remember, Joe Flacco is playing with a sprained AC joint, so he's not perfectly healthy either. I'm not saying his injury is going to help them rush Joe Burrow back, but it could play a small factor into. It's the opposite of what we're seeing in San Francisco. Mac Jones is playing really well. We're gonna get Brock Purdy perfectly healthy. Mm-hmm. Flacco's playing good, but the Bengals are losing. Burrow, all right, you're 90%. I will take that. Let's go.
I think the biggest question is just going to be, is there a chance of re-injury? If he gets to 90%, it's like he's not full speed, but he can push off of the foot and he's not going to re-injure it, then they're fine to bring him back. Just a quick question here. Is Bucky even going to come back before the end of the season? It's so frustrating they're not disclosing his real health situation. I wish we knew more. The reason I say he's going to be back is because they haven't put him on IR. There has to be a point where they would have put him on IR, I would think, if they expect him not to be back. And that should have been before 6 weeks after he actually got hurt. Like, if, for example, the Kyler Murray thing, eventually they just conceded and said he's going on IR. So I don't think it's going to be the entire season, but I'm not going out there to speculate he's going to be back this time, like I've been trying to.
Yeah, it was worth notice. Today they did have a talk with Todd Bowles, and they said hopefully we'll see if he can take a hit when they asked him about returning soon. So we're getting a hopefully.
He's been typically calling him out for the next week on Monday. So the fact that he didn't this week is actually a good sign.
So just maybe another week or two, but hopefully he gets back.
Cool. And then tight ends to look for on the wire that you can have instead of trading for Jake Ferguson. Dalton Schultz has had an uptick in targets lately. He's actually had more than 10, I think 2 weeks lately. And then Theo Johnson has had a major uptick in targets since they lost both Cam Scatteraboo and Malik Neighbors. So Theo Johnson's a guy to go out there. You can probably play on matchup or just hope for touchdown dependency.
Yeah, it's the tight ends. I kind of went on a rant earlier, so.
Yeah. I'll leave you off, and I'll leave you to your reminder to make a bumper for the Monday night preview, because we are talking Eagles-Packers.
We are talking Eagles, Packers, and where do we want to begin with this game?
I don't know. There's so many different ways you could go. I loved that we made a joke in our group chat this morning about how the Eagles should run 50 tush pushes tonight, just out of spite.
And I said, yeah, there's a lot of people like, they should run it on the first play. Yeah, give me 2nd and 9 on the first play or the first drive of the game. Like, let's do that. That makes a ton of sense.
It's not going to happen. And I do think actually they've run less tush pushes than in the past. There's been full games they've gone without running them. And then there's some times where they run 4 in a row, like against the Giants on primetime. So it's kind of hard to tell. But I'm still on the stance of they need to ban it because I'm tired of complaining about it. But the reasons that they keep giving for doing it are bad. But let's leave that off to the side. That's not really about this game. This is a big measuring stick game for the Packers because they've had good games against good opponents, and then they've had really bad games against bad opponents. So, like, is the Panthers game a fluke, or is it legit? Are they just inconsistent and they can play with anybody? And it's just like, if they get to the playoffs, are they going to have the bad game at the wrong time?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me as a fan, rooting for it, but just objectively thinking about how this game is going to be playing out. One of the Packers' biggest weakness this year has been the offensive line, the defensive line, especially the interior, and that's where the defensive line of the Eagles thrives. Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis. That's where they honestly, hopefully, Jalen Carter decides to spit on Jordan Love on the first drive. That might help our chances a little bit.
Let's hope you watch some tape of Dak before that, right? Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, give him a little smirk or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
They bring in Micah Parsons, but Lane Johnson has as much experience going up against Micah Parsons as anybody. He's beaten them. But they go back. They've had some heated battles. The Packers, they lose Tucker Kraft. Arguably, there's their most important player on offense, not named quarterback this year, Tucker Kraft. They lose him. They don't have Matthew Golden this week. He is on the inactives list. They don't have Nate Hobbs, their starting cornerback, on the they don't have Lucas Van Ness to help. They're a little bit banged up. They are still going with Brandon McManus after he has missed 3 kicks in the last 3 games. Like, there's just a lot of unknown from them. And then on the Eagles side, ironically, they don't have Jair Alexander for the Packers. They don't have A.J. Dillon, 2 former Packers. They're both inactive. Jair didn't even travel with the team. But there is one name that is worth monitoring on this, and it's Cam Jurgens, their center. The Eagles' offensive line is elite, top tier. Jurgens has been fantastic in replacing Kelsey. Their tackles, probably the best tackle pair in the league. Their guards have been susceptible at times this year. Cam Jurgens has kind of been that anchor in the center. Without him, can the Packers cause some disruption up front? That is what I'm going to be paying attention to. It still feels like an uphill battle for this game. And for what it's worth, this game opened as Packers as 2.5-point favorites. It is now swung all the way to Eagles 1.5-point favorites as of
today. The Eagles are still, from what I saw, the Eagles are still underdogs by 1.5. It just moved 1 point.
No, it's switched completely.
Wow. Okay.
This afternoon.
This afternoon it switched.
Late money came in, it switched.
Wow. I think I know. I didn't know if I was just because I'm in Philly market and I hear a lot of that people were super shocked that the Eagles weren't favorites coming into this game after the Packers just lost a game to the Panthers. And you got to think more teams than not have good records off the bye. The Eagles are no different. They have a really good record off the bye, and they even have an extra day on top of that. Maybe that means rust, but normally that means, being able to get together a solid game plan and get healthy. Your argument for Cam Jurgens, who actually missed the game before the bye for the Eagles, and he's been on and off the field as well as Landon Dickerson, one of their guards. And that's why they haven't had as much success running the ball, but it looked like they were starting to figure something out before the bye. Packers, great run defense. Is the Eagles having the healthy offensive line going to make the difference and make it the first team that's going to be able to gash the Packers on the ground? Or is that going to cancel out, and we're going to be looking at, can Jalen Hurts throw the ball, which he has plenty of times, and he has especially at points this season, but it's not always consistent.
Yeah, I think the run defense is going to be the big factor. They're only averaging 89 yards rushing per game, but Rico Dowdle just had a really good game against them. So I think this game is going to be who gets a lead first, because that's when both of these teams strive. They strive with leads. And the Eagles, they like to go 3 and out a lot. Green Bay doesn't get people to go 3 and out a lot. The turnovers have been issues. I mean, all in all, it should be a good game. And like you mentioned, Green Bay goes from, they win this game, they're second in the NFC, top of the NFC North. They lose this game, they go to fall to 7th, 3rd in the NFC North. So like a big game for them. The Eagles have a little bit more flexibility because of their conference as well. One more note on the spreads. Tell me if you've ever seen this before. Depending on where you look at the line. So DraftKings still has them, not a sponsor, as Eagles plus 1.5.
Which is where I pulled from for our rundown, which is why I thought it was that. Cool.
FanDuel has them minus 1.5. BetMGM has them plus 1. So like, it's like you have both sides of the spectrum depending on your platform.
And I've seen in the past where they could be like a half a point, maybe a point off, but I've never seen it actually flip odds. So that is very odd to me.
DraftKings minus 1.5, FanDuel plus 1.5. That's basically a 3-point swing depending on your betting platform, which is very fascinating.
Yeah. And I mean, this kind of feels like a game that should have been a pick'em in my mind anyway. They're going to get more money by putting up a line regardless, but still.
No. All right.
No.
What's your prediction? We don't normally do this, but because the podcast listeners, but why not?
I am thinking the Eagles get the lead and they're able to grind it out. I'm going to go Eagles 28, Packers 20.
I think, wow, 8 points. That's kind of crazy. Probably right. Probably I just don't want to hear that. I think it's going to be a lot closer. I think the Packers end up missing a field goal that comes back to bite them like every one of their other losses or ties this year. So I'll say the Eagles get the victory like 23-21. So the field goal would have gave them the win. That's where I'm going to go. 23-21. Philadelphia. God, I hope I'm wrong. One last fan question before we get out of here.
Cool.
Back to your buy or sell. Is Bijan gettable now with multiple mediocre weeks, or not worth going after him because they give, or is it not worth to go after them? And then they also give the touchdown attempts to Algier.
He's still too much of a talent to completely count out. If the owner is frustrated and you can get him for cheaper than what you would think of as that like first round value where he was drafted, I think he's definitely somebody who you should target, and you could. I just don't think a lot of people are still selling because even though he's been frustrating lately, he's still RB4, and people are going to think about the fact that he was drafted in the top 3 to 4 in pretty much every fantasy draft. So I think he's going to be a little unreachable when it comes to just, name value, even though maybe if you just look at his stats in the last 3 weeks, he shouldn't be.
With that said, they have been a little bit underwhelming compared to the 3 weeks before, but he still only scored under 10 points one time or 2 times this season. So,
yep. And the schedule coming up is favorable. Carolina, New Orleans, the Jets, Seattle's a tough one. But leading up to the fantasy playoffs, at least, pretty favorable schedule. In the fantasy playoffs, Tampa Bay, Arizona, Rams. Could go either way, honestly.
Yeah, I think he's ungettable. I mean, you're going to have to give up more than it's not a guy that I say that, but I've seen dumb stuff. I've seen Breece Hall, as of 2 weeks ago, get traded in a dynasty league for 2 first-round picks. I've seen Jamar Chase get traded for 3 linebackers in a full IDP league. So no player is truly ungettable, but I would say highly unlikely that you'll be able to get a Bijan Robinson for anything less than another top-end elite player.
And it doesn't really matter, but I did misspeak. He's actually RB5 right now after this week. He was RB4 coming into this week. Gibbs passed him, but not that that's that important.
All right. Anything else you want to add?
No. It's been fun. I'm looking forward to texting you during the game. And
I'm probably going to turn my phone off because I'll be irritated.
Cool. Looking forward to that. Then I'll just message the group chat with you and you get to read it back later and be more angry.
I appreciate that. But as always, thanks for checking out another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. We're live Monday. I'll be back Thursday. We got some guests coming up next week because I will be out. So if you're tired of hearing about me, make sure you join next week for sure. We got the Packers. We got the Eagles tonight. It's going to be a good game. We'll break it all down on the Thursday episode, getting you ready for week 11. Make sure you follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, X, TikTok, all those good places. And we'll talk to you all then. Go, Pack, go.